Welcome to the Renaissance Barbershop. I'm Tim McIntosh, and I'm joined here by our esteemed guests and my business partner here, Corey Bell. And welcome to the Renaissance Barbershop conversation on entrepreneurship. Just a little bit of background about the Entrepreneurship Club and this conversation that we're having today. As barbers, one of the things that we are privileged by our clients and all of the wonderful stories and things in terms of, our clients, what they do, who they are. And, we've always benefited from their knowledge, their wisdom. And we always thought about what is a fun way we could share that information with the public. Because we're not the only ones that want to benefit from, the collective wisdom and the knowledge of our clients and who they are. As you know, we've been going through some challenging times in society in terms of the COVID, what we're in now, the businesses, going up and going down. But before I get into that, I just wanted to, introduce our guest and tell a little bit about who they are. And we want them to share some of the things that they've seen from their collective experiences going through this and helping us navigate, more successfully through this time of entrepreneurship as businesses, as individuals, and so we can navigate successfully. So let me introduce our wonderful panel of guests. First, we have Miss Dina Labriola. Dina is a partner at Fox Rothschild, an LLP. Dina has a dynamic transitional practice that spans the range of business matters from drafting and negotiating corporate agreements and documents to leading all aspects of mergers and acquisitions, debt and equity financing deals. She also assists a wide variety of businesses with corporate governance structuring, development initiatives, and expansion opportunities. Dina also serves as general counsel to a number of closely held North Carolina companies and beyond. Next, we have Mr. Lindsay Mills over here. Lindsay is with the Callens Group. The Callens Group is a consulting and strategy firm helping individuals, organizations, and professionals to maximize their return on investment through people, processes, products, and services. Lindsay also just completed his book that we're going to chat a little bit more about this evening. His book entitled Your Business Venture: The Prep, the Pitch, the Funding. Learn the secrets of pitching your venture to raise funds for your idea. And lastly, we have Mr. Jamal Aliven. Jamal is our Vice President and Senior Relationship Manager in Commercial Banking at Bank of America, Merrill Lynch. Jamal is an experienced mid-level banker with 20-plus years of experience in developing strong relationships with commercial businesses and corporate leaders. He also specializes in areas of complex credit, financial analysis, commercial lending, accounting, and federally backed SBA programs. Jamal also works with a number of municipal personnel and elected officials analyzing, operating, and capital budgets used to develop a range of financial instruments used to strengthen financial awareness while creating lending programs designed to fund capital projects. We want to thank that was a lot. Ooh, Lord. But it just goes to show just the depth of experience that our group has here. And what we're going to do, we're going to open it up online. Get ready for your questions. We're going to go around, and each of our guests are going to share just some insights that they've gained through this time to share with entrepreneurs during this time in this present climate that we're in. So we're going to lead off first with Miss Dina. Dina, if you take it away.
Okay. All right. Well, there's so much to talk about, and it's really hard to condense it into just a couple of minutes.
Yes.
So I'll do my best. But I guess if I'm talking to a bunch of entrepreneurs, and I guess for the moment I'll assume that those are entrepreneurs that have or aspire to have businesses much like the barbershop. And so obviously a couple of things that we've all learned during COVID is cash is king. So any actions you can take right now to preserve cash, that's important, especially kind of given the unknown length of what's ahead. So, cash is king. Contracts are negotiable. All contracts. And Jamal probably doesn't want me to say that because he probably had a bunch of lenders, a bunch of borrowers come to him and say, I need to renegotiate my terms. And but they are all negotiable. And frankly, with just a few exceptions, mostly we've been able to successfully negotiate some better terms to get businesses through the COVID period. So,
have we missed the boat on the negotiables, or is it going to go on for like another 6 months, a year? You think that window to still negotiate is available?
I think it has to, because I think the pandemic's not over. And so what we're seeing now is I'm actually seeing the second wave of negotiations specifically with respect to leases. Because what ended up happening was a bunch of folks had to close down, right? May have gotten some PPP funding, so renegotiated, and most landlords were thinking it would be 3 to 4 months, so they renegotiated for 3 to 4 months. And now businesses are back, but they're only back at maybe 50% capacity.
That's right.
And so we're now in this second wave of negotiation. So yes, I mean, yes to all the above. And then I think after COVID, because we have this sort of monumental thing happening in 8 days, right? Which is the election. And
that thing? Yes.
Yeah, that thing, right? And the wherever you may land, it's going to have an impact on whether and how quickly stimulus comes, for entrepreneurs. And then in some cases, if Biden wins, perhaps an entirely different tax plan. And to be fair, that won't impact small businesses as much as one would think, but certainly has potential if you are on the winning side of the pandemic and making a bunch of money, you will feel his tax plan. So I'll leave it there. That's what I've learned, and what's to come, and then look forward to hearing everybody else.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, we're gonna Lindsay. Mr. Lindsay's up next. What have you as an entrepreneur? You just completed your book, so share some insights, man. What are you thinking? Just kind of during this time period.
Well, during a pandemic or any time we have what we call disruptions in the general or what we call the new norm, there's always opportunity, and Airbnb. A lot of the big companies that you see now, the unicorn companies, came out of times where we had, depressions in 2008, 2000, those kinds of things. So entrepreneurs look for opportunity. And you think of something like, we were talking a little earlier about Zoom. I'd never even heard of or knew much about Zoom before March of this year.
That's right.
And now look, everybody's Zooming, right?
That's right.
And so what I do is tell entrepreneurs, look for opportunity, because what this kind of environment does is it presents opportunity, and can you fulfill the need? I was getting ready to go and get a webcam for my assistant, because her computer monitor didn't have a webcam. So I said, I'll just go over to the local Best Buy or something to get a webcam, and realize there's no webcams available because people are working from home, students, all that. There's no webcams. And so if you better get your iPad or your computer or something that already has one built in, because there was no webcams in the whole city, and I live in Winston-Salem. So there was another opportunity. So look for opportunities and the need where you are. No matter what the environment is, people are changing their entire business model. I saw a example of a company, they were doing car detailing. They changed their whole model to now doing COVID cleaning and sanitation for not only cars but businesses, and they are packed. They can't keep up with demand and having to scale and expand because they changed their business model to what the need is. And so I always tell people, look at something that you're passionate about, but first of all, look for something that people are willing to pay for, and they're willing to pay for it even if you don't have it at you just have a minimal viable product. It just gets done what people need to get done.
Right.
It may not be the best, but it fulfills that need at that point in time, and you can always iterate and get better. And so that's what I look at. And so I always look at it as opportunities. When the market was going down and people were, talking about I'm going to lose my entire 401k and my investments, I said, we've been through this before, and it looks like, the world is coming to an end, but you will find out that governments, corporations, everybody puts their focus on when everything is going down for everybody. All the focus is on it. Now, if it's just you or your company, they might let you go, but they're not going to let this whole thing go down. So when have you ever thought about, people getting $1,200 checks or money just flowing into the economy? Because if cash flow stops in this country, everything stops.
Yeah.
And so that's why they had to get that going. And so what I'm trying to get people to understand is your job, it can only be rented if you're working for someone or a company. But if you own a business, you have the opportunity to create some equity and value for yourself. So that's kind of where I stand on it.
Very cool. Very cool. Jamal, what are some thoughts you have, man, in terms of this time, what you've been seeing, in banking?
Absolutely. First off, thanks, Tim and Corey, for putting this together. It's very timely with everything that's going on. This is an economic environment that many of us haven't seen, even after 2008, what they call crash. This is very similar but very different at the same time. So it's been very challenging for business owners, people who want to start a business, people that are experiencing business. It's a whole gamut of things that have been happening. A couple of points that I want to share before we even really get deep into the conversation is any business owner or entrepreneur, the key is communication. Communicate with your banker, communicate with your counsel, be honest and open with what's going on, because that way we're trained professionals to help you through different situations. Now, are those conversations hard to have? Absolutely. But at the same time, you got to be honest and realistic with what's happening. Therefore, we can put together a plan to help you navigate through this. Dina made mention earlier about everything is negotiable. Hey, that's life. You might have a loan or whatever that instrument may be, and there will come a time where you might not be able to pay that. So call us as a bank, and I'm not just speaking on behalf of Bank of America. I'm speaking for any institution. Communicate with your banker. Be open and honest. Answer their calls when they call. We're going to call and check in. At least we're supposed to call and check in. We're going to call and check in on how you're doing, how you're making out. I have some businesses that are struggling right now. I also have some that are doing very well. So it spans the entire gamut. So communication. The other thing that I want to make mention to is good financial records. And we can talk about that a little bit as we move on into the session. But when I analyze a client or I'm working with a client, the first thing I'm going to look at is their financial performance. If you've got good records and those things reconcile, it might cost a little bit extra to hire a CPA or have someone that's versed in finance a little more than you may be yourself. Pay that extra dollar because it helps in the long run. And it actually gives more value to your business in the event sometime you may want to sell. Because the first thing I'm going to say is, hey, what do your books look like? Give me 5 years of your books. If you've got this stuff on the back of a napkin, chances are we're going to have some trouble.
Don't let Uncle Tyrone, who did
no,
don't let him
no. Uncle Tyrone get you started. Okay, so that's two of the biggest things that we've seen: communication and financial records. The third thing I will mention before we move on is look out for the programs that are around. We had the PPP that came out that was put in place to help businesses. Some businesses didn't know how to access the PPP. And so there was a mass hysteria going on beginning of March. But, find out the resources that are available to any business, whether small or large, take advantage of those things. Are the fundings always what we want them to be? No. But there are some things put in place that can help businesses.
Gotcha. Just to piggyback on that, I know that the time is coming up for kind of like the forgiveness period of PPP, but it's been a lot of conversation about how that's going to be rolled out. Is it going to be extended? What are some of the things that you've been seeing, that's just kind of conversations in the banking world that's coming down the pike?
Well, back in March, I heard the saying plenty of times, and you can use any variation of it. We're driving the bus and changing the tires. Okay, that's across all the institutions because this thing is new.
Yeah.
We haven't had a PPP before.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is changing. The other part is getting all of the representatives and the Congress and everybody else to get on one page and give forth what they're going to put forth. This thing changes almost every day.
Yeah.
There's some talk now about a streamlined process for dollar amounts that are under $50,000. That's still kind of in the works, hasn't been finalized yet, so I really can't speak to it.
Yep.
But the other part is, it goes back to your financial reporting. Get with your CPA. Make sure you've got your documents in place, and you use the amount and the money appropriately, and therefore your forgiveness shouldn't be hard to meet the requirements.
Gotcha.
But everyone right now, they changed the coverage period. So some clients are like, hey, what's the coverage period? And from any institution, the representatives, we cannot validate or speak to what that's going to be because it's an SBA program. We're just a conduit for the SBA.
Right.
But I think my experience is every lender has been a little bit different in the way that they're looking at forgiveness. But if you follow the rules now, at least for forgiveness, appear to be somewhat settled in the application that you would have to use. So I think that your banker in particular will help you and through the forgiveness process if there's questions. Lawyers, CPA, all of us are well versed on it now. I think that because we've had to really advise folks. In terms of the stimulus going forward, anybody's guess because it really depends on when it comes out.
Right.
Here's what I think I know, and
Okay.
it's still a wild guess. I think a lot of the division is coming around what's going to go back into states. Because states need funding, and I think that's a lot of where the disparity is between at least the Republicans and Democrats right now. So what we think we know is that there is some appetite, and perhaps even a large appetite, to do some sort of small business lending. Whether that looks like PPP again, I don't know, but they're going to look at another round of some sort of stimulus for small businesses. And again, I don't know that I've heard it's kind of a supplemental PPP. It may also be, I've heard some things about perhaps the hardest hit industries, although I haven't seen a great definition of what that means. And so my guess is it's going to be tied to some loss of revenue, but that's a guess again.
Okay.
And so, but who knows? And so I think that once, that will be in the next stimulus package. I think the difficulty is, are they going to wait until, particularly if Biden wins, if the election happens and then the new Congress comes in? Because that's 4 months from now.
Yeah.
Right? And that's 4 months of waiting. So and that's really, to me, where I think the gating piece is.
What makes this thing really challenging, and we've all mentioned it, we've got a global pandemic. We've got a very volatile election is happening. We've got businesses that are open, we've got businesses that are closed. We've got a lot of uncertainty out there, and that's starting to trickle down, from the biggest to the smallest folks. And it's a lot of uncertainty, which leads to a lot of panic and desperation, so it's just, they call it the perfect storm, and that's exactly what it is. Because if these things happened, siloed by themselves here or there, we as a country can probably manage it a little bit better, but the fact of the matter is happening all at the same time.
Yeah.
But to Lindsay's point, the innovation, when we step back from this 10 or 15 years from now, the innovation that's going to come out of this is, I don't even know what's being developed, but I know it's going to be amazing.
Well, when you think about it, I had someone 2 years ago approach me about telehealth. There's like, well, this is going to be the wave of the future, and you get into this company, and
Did you
people.
invest?
No, I was like, people are still want to go see their doctor and see it, and where this person was coming from, they were going kind of outside of the traditional network of health insurance. The way the health systems work. But what you saw there, it was 10 years down the road before telehealth was really going to be, or telemedicine was going to be really put into place and a buy-in. It happened 3 months because a pandemic happened. And so some of these ideas and business opportunities were compressed time frames because there was a need in place. And so you think about, telehealth, you think about, you know the you got Dropbox, you got DocuSign. I was using DocuSign for several years, and I was trying to get clients to switch over and start doing that, especially some of my elderly clients, and they just, it was hard trying to get them to do that. Now it's like you have to, and they're like, well, send that DocuSign over and let me get it done.
Right.
And so those are the kind of things that you look at. Is something like this helps compress time frames because you almost have to. Where in the past we've been slow to do things, and you even think of our politicians, how long would it take them to get monies out into the community and help people out in just a normal environment? They would just let people suffer. But when it comes down to, money not being able to flow into our economy, or you just think now local municipalities and even car insurance companies, when have you ever had a car insurance company send you back some of your premium?
Right.
Like, we're making so much money.
Right.
There's no accidents.
Right.
We got to send you some of this money back.
Right.
I know I got a $12 check or something.
Right.
I'm like, what?
Right.
They lowered your premiums and
Yep.
sent you some money back
Yep.
because the market changed.
That's
There's
right.
there's not any accidents for 3 months hardly. 'Cause
Right.
nobody was on the road, and so there's opportunities there. So who got that money? Who got that money? Grocery stores and Dollar General and Dollar Tree and
Right.
Amazon.
Walmart and
Right.
Amazon.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
They got, so the money still goes somewhere. It's just, are you going to be in that? Are you going to be in the middle of those transactions for the most part?
So thinking about, the innovation, right? You're innovating, right? You're in a business that, like ours, we've had to shut down, during the pandemic time, right? So now you're thinking about, innovating. Okay, now I see this niche in the market. I want to shift. So give me some thoughts about things to do in terms of shifting. And I have this idea, I want to pivot. And then also to kind of piggyback on that, now I need some funding to pivot, And then I need to renegotiate with my landlord.
Right.
So just a little bit about that, because you're right. We have to kind of accommodate and understand the times where we are and adjust accordingly.
Right.
Or become non-existent.
Right.
So innovation. Talk to me a little bit more about innovation.
Well, I look at it like you want to be fluid in your business for one thing, because you want to have multiple streams of income. Because at any point in time, that business can dry up, or the economy could change, laws could change. So you want to develop some multiple streams of income. And prime example is kind of what you said. People were growing their hair out and not shaving and all those things for 3 months.
Right.
So what do you do as a business owner in the personal service industry, where you have intimate contact with people? You try to figure out some value add during that period of time, and then when you come back stronger. When I walked in today, I saw you had a temperature gauge monitor right there on the wall, and so that probably wasn't a good seller 3 months ago.
Right.
Now they probably can't keep them on the shelf, right?
Right.
Look what we're doing now. We're in here socially distanced with masks on. We couldn't even find masks 3 months ago, right? So those are the opportunities that I think that people just need to be real fluid with their ideas and their thoughts. And sometimes you got to let a business go that is not that's not valuable anymore, or it's non-existent.
Right.
But people always going to want to get a haircut. They always want to look good, even on their Zoom, right?
Right.
So when the second stage opened up, y'all could start opening up, and then you figured out a way to set the appointments, have your social distancing going on. So I think entrepreneurs will always figure it out one way or another. So you can only keep them down just for so long. That's how I think about it.
Gotcha. Now, what do you think, Jamal? So now, I'm a business owner and I've been doing this, but now, we need to make some improvements in our business, and we need funding, for it. Tell me about that in terms of innovating and needing to fund that shift.
Yeah, I took a couple notes as, the comments were coming forward. The first thing that, we're going to look at is, ideas are good. And, I'm speaking from the bank, not necessarily Bank of America's perspective, but a banker's perspective, where you know, a good idea is a good idea. You know, how are you going to put that good idea into motion? So a couple of things. One, you know, if you've got a business that's solely concentrated in one area, you got to think about how you're going to diversify. And you may have mentioned that earlier. You know, how you're going to diversify what you offer. And is that, you know, that new product or that new action, whatever, is it sustainable?
Right.
You know,
Right.
is there are you going to be able to offer that through on, you know, however long in perpetuity it may be? The other part too is, you know, all banks, regardless whether you're big, small, regional, what have you, they're going to look to diversify their risk. So if you're coming into this business or whatever this new idea is, hey, I got this awesome idea, and yes, it might be an awesome idea. How are you going to shield the bank from its risk?
Okay.
So the bank is going to lend according to risk.
Right.
One, they might charge a premium for their rate, or they might not do the loan at all. If it's too risky, they're not. Some banks don't operate in certain segments because they don't like that risk. They just won't do it. So, you know, as a business owner, you really have to think about that. You know, how am I going to market this business? So if the bank doesn't work, then you got to think of a different route. You know, how am I going to raise funds? You know, there's crowdfunding. There's you know, all these different platforms. I had someone reach out to me the other day that, you know, you'd lend $25 or $50, like 100 people do that. You've got $5,000 that you're borrowing.
Right.
So, you know,
Very
it's a way to crowdfund. So
Yeah.
you do that, you pay that loan back, and you can show the bank, hey, you know what, hey, I've got a track record. This is a proven model, it works. And Dina may mention earlier, cash is king. You know, if I look at you and I pull up your financial statements or whatever, and I don't see any cash or something that's there to fall back on,
Right.
not necessarily from, you know, a collateral piece. We're cash flow lenders. All banks are cash flow lenders. Some are collateral lenders. And what I mean by that is we're going to make a loan depending on if you can pay it back. Cash
That's
flow.
interesting. Cash flow lenders.
Cash flow
yeah,
lenders. We're cash
okay.
flow lenders.
Yeah.
Collateral lenders are, hey, you know what? Okay, pledge your house, pledge everything, over collateralize this $10,000 loan. You miss your payment, I'm selling everything you have and I'm going to make a profit over what I sell.
Right.
So a lot of banks do this because it's a lot of work.
Right.
You know, it's very expensive to manage properties, manage what have you.
Right.
So yes, we will, you know, regardless of who the bank is, they will take the collateral, but they're not collateral lenders.
Is there any flexibility with a lot of the existing, some of the SBA products? You know,
Yeah.
some businesses already have, you know, existing loans. Is there sometimes some flexibility in making some shifts in those funds?
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why the SBA is there, because they can be a little bit more creative with their guarantee,
Okay.
because they're government backed, so they have a little more flexibility than your traditional bank or financial institution does,
Okay.
where they can change your term, they can renegotiate your rate, they're not going to charge you certain fees. You know, they could be a little bit more creative in their term. You know, a traditional loan, let's say commercial real estate, 15 years on the bank side. SBA, you can get up to 25.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
you know, they're a little bit more flexible on how they can structure deals, which allows them to, you know, help more businesses to become bankable. You know,
Right.
for a lot of times, especially when I started in the industry, you know, a client would be an SBA first, you know, get their feet grounded, grow, show their repayment structure, and then they'll come onto the bank, we'll pay out the SBA loan, and now you're a bank client.
Gotcha.
So there's several different ways to look at that.
Gotcha.
So let me actually echo a little bit this, but actually look at it from a little different. I want to look at it from the aspect of private money.
Okay.
Because you're right, all of these things are great ideas from the aspect of kind of out there money from banks and from public programs. But you know, there are a lot of low-level kind of venture capital and angel funds that have made a bunch of money in investments because the economy's been so good for like the last, you know, 7 to 8 years. And so what they did is a typical investment is, you know, for a lot of these either angels or VCs, and then even up above that private equity, you know, can tend to be anywhere from like well, angels a little bit less, but like 3 to 7 years, let's say. And so a lot of these private money investors are sitting on cash because they've cashed out in the last year or two, and they've got a bunch of money sitting on the sidelines now. And they're looking at the market and they're saying, well, I don't know, you know, the market's volatile. Yes, it's been great, but now we have a big election, could be a huge change in taxes. That's probably going to tank the market in and of itself. So that I want to go and deploy some of my private capital. So
Okay.
it's hard. The problem with the average person is they can't get to these people with money.
Right.
But the private, if you do, or if you have a rich uncle or somebody, if Uncle Tyrone is rich,
Right.
you
Right.
know,
Right.
and
He just can't do the
Right,
books.
that's right.
you know, and you can't do the taxes, but
Right.
you might know somebody, you know, that wants to deploy some private capital.
Yep.
That's a really great market right now. It's hot.
Okay.
People are
Okay.
investing because they're really investing in businesses that, you know, might come out of this pandemic as winners.
So it hasn't really been a shift in their lending practices, you know, the private equity, the angel fund. It hasn't been a big shift in terms of the onset of COVID and the current climate and things of that nature?
No, I think they're going to look at an investment the same way.
Okay.
But I think there's probably less businesses to invest in right now, just because if you're a winner, you're a real winner.
Right.
And
right.
now and you've got a bunch of folks that have a bunch of capital that are looking to deploy it.
Right.
Because like I said, so many of these private money investors have cashed out recently, and they just, and you know, the way they make their money is then they reinvest. You know, they take their profits and then they reinvest, right? Well, you know, they were kind of looking around the market, but then the pandemic just hit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so everything slowed down and stopped, and then they realized, well, we're not making any money in the markets now. You know, our cash is just sitting by the side, and that's not what we do. So I think there's some opportunity in private lending.
Okay.
I would say that money will always find a home to where it can get a good return on investment, and that's where investors are looking. They're looking, if you have a great idea and people are buying it, and you can't keep stock on the shelf, or you can't fulfill that need, and you just need more capital, you just let the market know, and the money will find you, and the investments will find you, and the bankers will find you, because bankers are smart too. Is like you said, they're cash flow lenders. So if you got a bunch of cash flow coming in, and you just need more cash in order to fulfill those orders or fulfill those needs, the bankers will find you. I was working with a client 2 years ago, and we had a contract with the government, pretty large contract, and we were trying to get $100,000 of credit line. Well, at that point, she didn't really have a lot of collateral, and you know, I knew the cash was coming in. I said, all we have to do is get enough cash to fund it, just enough cash to fund it. And the bankers were like, how long have you been doing business with this, and how long you been in there? I said, I guarantee you, if you give them the cash, it's going to flow.
Right.
And so we had to jump through a few hoops, and I had to go in and negotiate with the banker on how we're going to put this together, and this is what we'll do. And so we eventually went through an SBA community investment fund, the SBA kind of plan. So I had to talk with them on how to structure it. It was a traditional loan, but we structured it like a credit line.
Okay.
So we were able to pay that off in 3 months, have all of that cash sitting there. And then the next time we came up with a deal, we went to the bank and said, we have $100,000 sitting in the bank now. And they're like, well, we're ready. We can do some business with you because you have a proven record. And so my client says, well, why are they willing to give me all this money now when I really don't need it? Whereas when I really needed the money, I couldn't get any money.
Right.
And so when you talk about being cash flow lenders, it's because she had proven herself. Credit was great, and so this is what you have to do: is you have to put yourself in a position where your books are in order, pay more for your accountants, pay more for your books to be in order. And so when you present it to a banker, it looks good for them, and they can go and get an approval or sign off because they're on your back. They're trying to get the deal closed too because they got goals, right?
Right.
So if you can get a deal done and they can sign off on it, then it makes it makes it go around better. Yeah.
Gotcha. I think financial literacy, this kind of conversations turning, financial and really kind of understanding that whole world, of being financially literate when it comes to your personal, when it comes to businesses. What resources can you guys share for folks to even become even more savvy in terms of entrepreneurship, banking, legal, because it's a lot of different levels in terms of how finances work, right? And so what would you suggest in terms of learning, just educating as entrepreneurs and getting some of this good knowledge?
I'll jump in on that, and you all may laugh at my answer, and
never.
It may even sound archaic. But Google.
Yes, that's right.
Google.
Okay.
You'll be surprised what you can find if you spend an hour in front of Google. Now, mind you, you got to look at the source.
Yes.
And make sure the source is reputable. And after you read about 5-10 minutes, you'll know whether they have some credence behind it or not. So I would definitely start there. The other thing is, and I hate to go back to the SBA, but your local self-help. They've got a ton of programs, free literature, whether it be in the branch, online, or what have you, or just reach out to a banker.
Okay.
I've talked to clients, non-clients, people just in passing. Part of that is just who I am. But just ask the question, and you'll be surprised that people love to talk to you. So to answer your question directly, Google. I mean, you can find finance for dummies or whatever it may be.
Right.
Just Google it.
Right.
Hey, Jamal, I have a question.
Sure.
Right now, and tell me if this is a good or bad thought process. I like to look at it right now, I'm playing with house money. Meaning, I've been trying to get into a lot of different opportunities right now, because my hope is if they all trash and they all fail, you won't hold it against me in 2 years when I try to get a money because I got bad credit. And I can just say, hey man, it was during the pandemic. Is that going to be a case if I failed on some leases, if something happened? Because I'm hoping that those scores and that credit report doesn't reflect the same.
Right.
I'm trying to get your input on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a really good question. And I'll say this. It's really going to depend on the financial institution you're dealing with. And the reason why I say that is, of course, we'll pull a credit report. Anybody's going to pull a credit report. Some are going to be more lenient. Some are going to be very cut and dry. It really depends on who you're dealing with. A lot of times what I've seen in my history is if you can provide a really good explanation of what happened, and you can show some way that you're coming out of this thing and you're navigating properly, and it's just a blip on the radar. Let's say it's just 6 months, but everything else, the year before, everything else is fine.
Right.
You're good to go.
Right.
But if they start to see a downward trend, even after things start to pick up from the pandemic and everything is still going down, it's going to be a really hard case to sell.
Okay.
But if it's just a blip on the radar, the majority of financial institutions will, they might charge you a higher premium, but they'll allow you to still move forward.
Yeah. I think there's also, that's where communication and relationships kind of come in. It's the same thing under PPP. I heard a lot of frustration from clients with PPP that didn't have previous relationships with a financial institution, right? And then you heard the exact flip side. Those folks that were, even small businesses that were really small businesses, but that had a constant flow of communication with their banker, knew their banker, had spent time with them and sought them out. Those folks tended to get PPP relatively easily. And so even from what I would say were some institutions that I think it at least was reported in the news that it wasn't easy to get PPP from them. So I do think that's kind of the same scenario here too, which is exactly, you're right, they're going to look at kind of pre-pandemic and trends, but they're also just going to know, do I know you? Do I know you? Have I had a relationship with you? So that's where those relationships are really going to count. It sounds elemental, but it really is.
Really good point.
Yeah, I was a banker. Coming out of college, I spent 2 years as a branch manager doing banking, and it was just always surprising for me to see people come in that just had no idea of how the banking process worked.
Right.
And that it is about relationships. One thing that I did know when I was in banking is we had some pretty high goals, and people don't realize that bankers have goals. You got to get the money out, because it does no good for the bank to keep the money in there. So we're trying to lend to you as fast as we can if we can justify doing it.
Right.
I'd love to lend you $50 million and make my goals for the whole year if I could, but it has to be a justifiable reason. And so I think it's really key. Back when I was first starting and doing presentations on just how do people start their businesses and getting finance, it was one of the things that I talked about is the relationships. I said a lot of times what people are trying to do is they're trying to go to the bank and get a withdrawal where they have no account even set up. That's what you kind of do when you go to get a loan and you don't even have a banking relationship. You don't have a bank account with them. You say, I need to get a PPP loan. They're like, well, we don't even know you. You don't even have a bank account with us, but you're trying to take a withdrawal. So what I usually coach people to do is go meet with bankers and credit unions before you need the money. Build some relationships, put a little bit of money in the bank. I have 6 bank accounts, so I just spread my money out a little bit all over the place, because you never know what's going to go on, and you want to have those relationships with different institutions, because they're only going to take a certain amount of risk at a certain point. So you have to have 4 or 5 relationships so they can spread that risk out. And if you might need, $10 million, well, one bank probably is not going to take all that risk themselves.
Right.
But if you can get $2 million from this one, $4 million from this one, $3 million from that one, and you can cash flow it and make it work, it spreads the risk out.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Gina, you were about to mention something about the education, the financial literacy
Oh,
piece.
yeah. I would just say, again, it's kind of like the Google answer. I read the Wall Street Journal, and I just think it's the whole purpose of a newspaper like that is to put things in kind of 8th grade terms, and that's really the direction that they give to their writers. Now, I would say it's not always in 8th grade terms because I have to look up a fair bit too. So take that with a grain of salt. But I do think you start seeing like how things fit together. The more you read things, and so that to me is I always do a skim of that 5 minutes in the morning just so I kind of understand the financial world, because I think what you'll start seeing, and particularly by reading a source like that, is you'll start seeing how it impacts other decisions in the universe, right? And really not just, yes, of course, political decisions, but even just the choices you make in your kind of day-to-day life. So it's just it really drives so much, and I think you'll start seeing those connectivity points.
Yeah.
To
Connect the
piggyback
dots.
on that a little bit, kind of going back to kind of the theme that we've talked about with communication. Your average business owner may say, hey, how do I connect to XYZ, or how do I find, a CPA or a banker or whomever? Yeah, I went and opened my account, but I really don't see anyone. I was just thinking back to when we initially met. Dean and I met, I think it was in 2008. We were all part of a Leadership Durham.
Yeah.
And, that was an awesome way. But, that kind of, I'll piggyback that on, join your local chamber.
Right.
Yeah.
Join your chamber. They have events all the time, and I'm not plugging for any chamber, so I'm a member of several. They have events all the time. They've got bankers there, they've got CPAs there, they've got other business owners there.
Yeah.
And, you can network and share ideas. You make a friendship with someone, say, hey, who do you use for banking? They say, hey, well, I use XYZ.
Right.
They'll make that introduction.
Right.
And then it's simple. And that connection will begin to grow, and you'll be able to see some benefits from it. Because, of course, these chambers cost money, but, they have special programs for your smaller businesses. You don't pay as much as some, let's say, a large corporation would.
Just piggybacking on that, when I first moved to Winston-Salem, 20-something years old, right out of college, I was a banker, but I wanted to grow relationships really fast, so I joined the local Chamber of Commerce. And myself and when one of the local caterers, he was young in the business too, what we did was we became part of the membership committee for all the events they had every month, and we were on the beer table. Everybody came to us. Everybody knew us all the time because we were on the membership committee and the beer table.
Right.
So we got to know everybody. Everybody knew us, and we met everybody. And it just helped build my relationships very quickly in the community.
Yeah.
Because at that point, we were treating each event like we were hosting the event. And so when you're hosting an event, you tend to be more open and talking to people and more welcome. Where if you come in like a visitor, then you're not as engaging.
Yeah.
But if somebody's coming to your house, your event, you're meeting everybody, you know everybody's names. And so that's why I encourage people to do is get on a membership committee, or after the pandemic is over, those kind of things, or whatever virtual thing there is. Be the host where everybody knows your name, and you are you get that ticket to call somebody and reach out to them because you're representing maybe not just your company, but the organization that everybody's part of.
Right. That also opens up the opportunity to kind of bounce ideas off of other professionals in other industries.
Yeah.
Yes.
About the idea of kind of shifting, my business, or what do you think, and being able to connect with other folks, to get good insight and good wisdom from. That's really, really good. We have a quick question from Miss Michelle. Any tips on building your professional services team? Looking for a CPA, attorney? How do you evaluate if they should stay on your team or not, or just building and looking for professionals?
Well, I'll tackle that one first. Since,
Yes!
How about that?
you know,
I'll piggyback.
So it's So I think what we have to understand is where are you at in the life cycle of your business?
Okay.
So not every service provider is correct for
Right.
wherever you may be in the life cycle of your business. So, and that can be, you can sort of vet that out by way of, price and experience and you should ask questions. You should interview everybody. You should interview a couple of folks. And then you should ask about, do they service other folks that sort of are in the same stage and grade of business as I am? And then I'd say on the flip side of that is don't be afraid to change once you're out of that. Because oftentimes what I see, at least with respect to me, is I'm probably not a great fit just for price-wise because for the very smallest of businesses. And even though I can service those folks well, they can get good service at a lower price, and I realize that. So, but there is a point where they can transition up to me where we have the breadth and depth of services that they would need.
Right.
And so I would say don't be afraid to change horses, because a lot of times what I end up seeing is you'll have these big institutions that are very, very loyal to people and to their old service providers that they started off with, but just who can't service them well. So that's about, ask good questions and then make sure you have them again before you need them. You don't have to pay them.
Right.
They can just sit on your sidelines, but any service provider worth their salt will take initial meetings and will get to know you. And if they're not doing that, then you haven't met the right person.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, some service providers, they specialize in different industries.
Yeah.
So, if you're going to, speak to your, the colleagues that are in a similar industry and find out who they're using. And just like Dina said, interview 2 or 3 of them because they have a specialty in dealing in your industry where, all service providers can provide whatever, but they may have a specialty in, let's say, cosmetology or what have you.
Right.
So from my standpoint is I work with clients on lots of ends of the spectrum, because a lot of the clients come to me as referrals from other business owners or friends or family, those kind of things. And so what I do is I start with the client from where they are, and then I help them grow. And it'll be 4 or 5 years down the road, and a client will say, well, we've been working together for several years. Why have you never told me about this concept? And I'll say, well, you weren't ready at that point in time. You didn't know to even ask the question, so you weren't ready for this concept at that point in time. And so sometimes you can work with clients, but they have to grow into what level of expertise you're going to share with them, because not everybody is going to be at the level where Dina's going to be able to provide them service, because she's working at a higher level from a business standpoint than they're at that point in time. And so if you're not at that level, don't go in and pay those hourly rates. Try to work at a level where you are, and then work your way up, because you can outgrow your service providers too.
Yeah.
I got to outgrow you because I'm growing faster than you are. And when the service provider says I'm learning from you, you might need to go ahead and go do it.
Right.
Upgrade.
Trying to move on.
That's right.
That's really good. That's really good. So, we have a couple of moments left, and I just kind of think about, I just really appreciate you guys sharing your time and your thoughts. And, I love that this is going to be in digital format, so it just kind of live forever and continue to be shared. What are you, in terms of, where we are, what is your hope, moving forward? Where you are, what is your hope moving forward?
I can start.
Yeah.
My hope moving forward is, one, I can't say that we're going to go back to normal, because things will never be back to normal. Just to kind of learn and grow from what we dealt with over the past 6 months and use that as momentum to push us forward.
Okay.
We've learned so much, from a financial perspective, from a health perspective, from many different aspects of what we all dealt with as people to move forward. So I think we need to take all of that, because there was a lot of negative energy as well.
Yeah.
Take a lot of that negative energy and use that as a progression forward to, one, if something eerily similar happens, we know how to, one, deal with it, but 2, how to navigate through and be successful in the back end.
Gotcha.
So I think, gosh, it's such a big question.
Yeah.
It really was.
It's such a big question. So one thing that we haven't really talked about tonight is we've actually had a good, hopeful conversation, which I haven't had a lot. I've had a lot of doom and gloom, so I appreciate that about entrepreneurs moving forward and how they pivot and move forward. My hope is that this isn't as bad as we all think it is. And I say that really, really hopeful that that's the case, because we are in such the beginning phases of this, and I don't want to sound doom and gloom. But I want to be realistic that we do not know what the economic fallout is. We do not know what the health fallout is, and so I am just hopeful that this isn't as bad as we think it will be. And then I guess on a more hopeful note, I hope that if we can heal one another in whatever definition that you have for that, and I think everybody's definition is different, then business will follow.
That's good. That's good. That's good.
Well, I think that it's always a new normal. So wherever we are, that's the normal now. You know, when people say go back to normal, you're living normal right now. Whatever it is, that's normal. And it's a wake-up call for people who were stuck. Maybe they work in 20, 30 years in the same industry and never move forward. I think it should be like, you know, when you're in grade school, you know, you're expected to go from kindergarten to first grade to second grade, you know, year by year. Some people stay in the same exact spot, same exact position for 20, 30 years. I think what this forced a lot of people to do is reevaluate what their life is about, their career, from a personal standpoint. Even if you really enjoy being around your loved ones, your spouse, because you are stuck in there. I tell parents, you are now back like we used to be. You are the primary educator of your child. That's where it's supposed to be. And so being able to do that and learning how to work together, and I think a lot of times what this allowed people to do is slow down. We were running so hard prior to this pandemic that we were just running. And this allows us to slow down, take a break. You can't go anywhere. Think about your life, what you want to do, think about your goals, and then move forward. I think this is what it brought about.
Corey, what's your hope?
A lot of what Dina was at. Just hopefully everyone can do their best to get through this situation in a happy place, and so we can continue, you know, to start being more innovative and continue.
Yeah. It's good, man. A continual theme that you've just been listening and, you know, from you guys is, you know, the relationships. You know, and making sure even as we are becoming even more disconnected, relationships are even that much more important. You know, connecting, having conversation, reaching out, and I think that's a continual theme of how we're gonna, you know, make it through. You know, continue to connect, you know, with each other. It's more important, you know, now than ever, you know, before in our neighborhoods and our communities and business with each other, you know, as things are going on all around. But, you know, there again, I wanted to thank you guys for, you know, sharing your time, you know, sharing your knowledge, sharing your wisdom, because this is the kind of stuff that's impactful for, you know, for folks, you know, as they're navigating through, as we're navigating through. You know, it's for all of us, and I just appreciate you guys. Thank you online for coming. Where am I? What camera am I on? Camera 1, 3, 4. Mic check, mic check. Hello, yeah. Thanks for coming. Appreciate you. We have more clubs coming up. Running club, hiking club, biking club, kids club. We got the clubs. We got it going on. Thank you much. Good night.
Thank you.
That's cool.